I am joined today by WNBA analyst Roz Gold-Onwude. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. The season is back.
It is back, and you're back covering the New York Liberty, so we're excited to see you all summer, all throughout the season long.
Definitely. I cannot wait to run it back with the champs. I'm excited for the whole season. I feel like the whole league, a lot of the teams have ramped it up a ton.
Yeah, for sure. Saturday was a big day, even though Friday night was the games began. Saturday was a big day. The Aces and Liberty kicked it off. I was at that game covering in person. But then the next game, which we know a lot of people were looking forward to because it had that young lady, Caitlin Clark, in it, but it was the Fever versus the Chicago Sky. And that's become like a really premier matchup because it's Caitlin Clark on one side and Angel Reese on the other. And so, yeah, big time matchup in the afternoon. What'd you think of that game?
I actually think every single storyline was delivered in the game. Like, could the game have handed the audience every single thing that, like, you know, there was no flop about it. First of all, Caitlin Clark comes out, boom, triple-double to start it off. You got DeWanna Bonner, who raises herself to number 3 all-time in scoring. You have Angel Reese, who's a double-double. There's even a kerfluffle, if you will, between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Which it's just it's high eyeballs, it's high intensity, and I thought the Fever looked like a team that we kind of expected coming out of free agency. Yeah. They looked good, and my number one takeaway is that their defense looked so improved. We knew the offense was going to have more weapons. They were already high flying, but defensively they had 10 blocks. They held them to 20-something% shooting. I mean, it was just a concerted effort to work on that end. And I actually spoke with Coach Stephanie White, and that was a huge point of emphasis. They must improve, and honestly, the only way they could have gone from last season was up defensively. So that was one of my big takeaways from the entire team. Of course, there were a number of individual great players.
Yeah, and well, we knew they were going to improve on defense with a coach like Steph White going there. And you add in Natasha Howard, you add in DeWanna Bonner. Those things are going to come naturally. I'm curious, for Caitlin Clark's triple-double, she's tied now for the third most in WNBA history with Candace Parker.
That's crazy.
The Candace Parker, who took many more games to achieve that. I mean, what more can you say about Caitlin Clark?
She's the real deal. And she fills up that stat sheet clearly, but she stirs the pot. She makes this happen. She is the reason why for a lot of the activity and action that happens especially on the offensive end. Her control of pace and tempo, even just pick and roll with anyone. Take a moment to just watch what the defense does as they're either looking or adjusting to Caitlin. That often sets up a great read for her teammate to either pop or roll, and she has great delivery on the ball. I said this on Twitter, and I was like, I wonder if I'll have to take this back. Is Caitlin's passing more impressive to me than her exciting deep threes? Both are so amazing, but it's just that control and the ability to make so many other players better. And they haven't even completely finished meshing or becoming what they are gonna be. I think we're gonna see 15 plus. We're gonna see a number of 20 assist type games.
Okay.
From Caitlin Clark, and she rebounds very well out of that position too. So this won't be her last triple-double either. Really impressed with her. And as long as we're talking, you mentioned the defensive, and I want to shout out Lexi Hull, Stanford, women's basketball, by the way. But she changes the game when she comes in. She's just willing to work hard on both ends. Offensively, she'll run that floor in the fast break. She's gonna cut hard backdoor. Caitlin found her. Defensively, I can always appreciate someone who's out there working. She's strong-bodied. She's working on defense. She creates a little offense off of defense. Her minutes were high impact. So you mentioned, all those players, Natasha Howard, DeWanna Bonner, all these different players that bring in defense. Hull too.
Absolutely.
Hull too.
For sure.
And then AB looked fantastic. Aaliyah Boston, very cerebral, high IQ type plays and reads. She played at different ranges. Her and Caitlin looked great. I like that Natasha Howard, the energy she brought. You don't even really need to run a ton of plays for her.
Nope.
She's gonna go and make something happen around the rim. And you always need someone who can create their own basket, especially off the bounce. And that's Kelsey Mitchell. She's a bucket. She's a speed enhancer. She's fast. They have so many weapons.
So many. And she didn't even have like a Kelsey Mitchell type, game.
I thought she set the tone in the beginning of the game for the first half.
She definitely did. But I think last year she had a stretch where she just was like game after game after game. We know she's capable of it. She's a bucket, very hard to stop. And so, they have a lot of weapons. And I will say, I think everyone I've seen, including myself, has them as a contender for this season. So
contender might even be an understatement. like for sure. I think we did that off of free agency.
We did. And look, they met expectations in that game, but I still want to, it was against the Chicago Sky, who I don't think are as good as a team. I mean, they
have some tests coming up.
Yes.
I think they got Atlanta, and then they have the Liberty coming up.
Yes.
And that's going to be a healthy test going both ways.
Right.
Look, we're not handing them the crown or anything.
Correct.
I've got, I personally have the Liberty as a favorite to run it back. But I think I saw things beyond that told me that there's a lot of potential for in the way this team can execute already
Agreed.
in game one.
I definitely think they'll be one of the Final Four. I have no questions about that. It's a long season, so we have to see how all of these teams progress.
Including Chicago.
I am curious, though, because you brought up there was like a little kerfuffle, and it's unfortunate. I say that only because we kind of just glossed over DeWanna Bonner becoming the third all-time, scorer in WNBA history, which is huge. She passed Tina Thompson.
Yeah, and just is only under Tina Charles.
Yeah.
These are the players that I played with. I'm with Tina, I'm with DeWanna, so I'm like, come on, ladies, represent for our generation of hoopers out here. But I also don't, and I think DeWanna is a player. I know 100% if things get tight, if the Fever are looking for a voice in a moment of adversity, I know it could come from DeWanna. I also know she's respected. I also know stylistically, as a teammate, she often is described kind of like has a mom vibe. And if you need a bucket, she can go get it. In game one of the season, to your point, I don't think she was out there chasing shots or that record. I think she was very comfortable in allowing the game to come to herself, getting others involved. She found Natasha Howard a few times, made the right play. But and they may experiment with, as they did in preseason, with bringing her in off the bench, if not a starter, just because you know what you're going to get.
Yes.
And you get this influx of offense. So it'll be interesting to see, actually, how Stephanie White manages all this talent. But I think the biggest indicator of that is if the Fever are interested in playing defense and they do that consistently, then yes, they're a very dangerous team. As long as they're serious about defense.
Now, so I want to ask you as a player, someone who's played, the little interaction between Caitlin and Angel Reese, where Caitlin, she said it was a take foul, but it was upgraded to a flagrant one. Did you agree with that call? And what did you just think about that entire interaction?
Yeah, I agreed with the call. I also thought Rebecca Lobo had a good call of it on the game and the broadcast. Before the ref came out with the call, she did a nice job of illustrating the kind of push and hand come down at the end. Look, as an isolated moment in basketball, that's a normal basketball play and a take foul, we move forward. When you take in the context and the history of these players individually, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, what their seasons were like last year, and then also their collective history together, there's reason to perhaps give more context or to just take a pause and take a look at what happened there. I think Caitlin reminds me a lot of Diana Taurasi in some ways. She be in the mix.
She does. And I feel like people don't talk about that enough. She can give it as much as she gets it.
She's in the mix. And I think oftentimes we catch the other player reacting to Caitlin. So, and as a player, I have found that so annoying. I've had a number of players where I got called for the foul. I'm like, ref, she did it to me
first. You missed it, right.
So I think, but that's also a skill, and it's also a caginess. But I think, look, it's actually Aaliyah Boston who ends up with the tech, and poor Aaliyah, she's always got to come in there and kind of take up for Caitlin, and same for Angel. She got caught on the reaction side.
What did you make of her reaction? Because there was a lot of conversation around it. Do you think she overreacted, or did you understand her reaction in the moment?
I understood the reaction. I think that's a normal emotion. I think it's very fitting for Angel. That's also how she commonly reacts. I think, the reaction to Angel is where it's become, disturbing and disappointing, because we just, the WNBA just dropped their No Space for Hate campaign. And I think this is a nice opportunity for the WNBA to, exercise that, right? So for them to come out at the top of the season, a lot of players asked for it, for you to be more official about your stance against anything that's harmful from fans to players. And they did right off the bat. But now, what does the execution of that look like? Is there a precedent that'll be set if a fan is out of bounds in how they're treating a player? Because the number one asset in this whole thing are the players, and you have to protect them. And look, Angel's the one that got hit. Why is she the one that's getting, crushed here,
Agreed.
And
it was somewhat of a role reversal, and I don't want to say it was the same kind of foul, but last year when Kennedy Carter, did her hip check on Caitlin, it was a very different reaction. And so, but in this instance, people are like, yeah, physical play, and it's kind of cheered on. I don't feel like it was treated the same last year, and it wasn't completely the same foul. Kennedy was a little more aggressive, but Angel, I don't know, what to make of it, her reaction in the post game. I think she just seems sort of past this. It was a quick answer about it in the post game. She was asked about it, and she's just basketball play, refs got it right, move on. So I don't know. I'm not in Angel's head. I'm just saying there's been a lot. There was a lot of reaction to it. I didn't get it. Players, men, women, all the time in basketball get into little stuff like that. Their teammates pull them back, and we move on. So I just don't know why every game between these two teams that involve these two players has to just turn into something else. It's exhausting. I'm waiting for the day we can get through one game where there's not all this extra stuff around it.
As soon as that play happened, I was let me go to Twitter. I was let me see. Exhausting is a good word, but just to come back to you, that's an interesting comparison, the Kennedy Carter foul versus what just happened here. I don't think those two fouls are the same.
They're not, for sure.
So I think, I don't and I think that's an important part of the conversation. However, the grace given to Caitlin to be able to quickly dismiss what happened there as, it's just a take foul, nothing more. Do we think if that went the other way, that grace would be as quickly given the other way?
I know it wouldn't be given the other way. And that's my point. I want to be very clear that I don't think what Kennedy did was okay. But it's also still not something it happens, right? I mean, you've covered a team like the Warriors. Draymond Green is way over the top, but players do things like that. And you always hear the old players talk about, man, hip check, do this, touch people up. So I don't think it was that deep. I also think, like you said, some things were ignored that were already happening on the court that led to that, right? And so I still thought, it led to someone following them at their hotel, and it just got so much bigger than it needed to be. And
Caitlin gets to quickly say, it's not that. It was a basketball play, enough.
Right.
But that wasn't afforded to other players who have fouled Caitlin last season.
Not anyone. And so, listen, I don't want to rehash all that from last year because it was a lot. But I want to know what you think we can do to get to a place where this is not what we're doing every time. I mean, just being candid, we know the black players are going to be treated differently, but what has to happen in your mind, or what do you think we can do so every time they play, it's not this conversation and dissecting it and Angel's being over scrutinized the way that she is?
I think it's interesting that this happened to happen on the very first game of the season, and it happened to be Angel and Caitlin. It easily could have not, and we could have just moved through a game where we said the Fever looked really good, and look, the Sky have work to do. Angel Reese, another double-double. Look, she's shooting threes, an expansion of her offensive game, and we would have moved on.
Right.
But it did happen, and it forced this right back to the front of the conversation. I think the onus needs to come off the players a bit, and like we said last season, now it's the top of the season. It's a great chance for the WNBA as an organization to assert themselves. Execution, set precedents on what's okay and what's not. And I think the quality of the product on the court is outstanding. And that, I have a feeling that if you keep doubling down on that this season, like that's going to be the focal point of the conversation. We happen to literally have the two biggest young stars in the game come face to face and have an issue, and that brought this all up. But had it not happened, I think we still would have been talking about the game. What I'll say is this, just to end though. At the end of in the post-game press conference, you mentioned Angel's comments. I'll tell you how I read it.
Okay.
I think, so she said, refs made the right play, move on. On one hand, I believe that, she believes that and just is like, let's play basketball. And I too, on one hand, believe that it's in a isolated situation, let's just play ball. But then on the other hand, what I also noted, or thought I read, of course I'm not Angel, but it also sounded like somebody who might have been like, dang, this is the first game of the season and we're already doing this again?
Yeah.
Like, just trying to eat it and just like squash it so that she wouldn't have to deal with none of that nonsense again. And what it read to me was an answer of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Again, the word you used, exhaustion. And that is the burden that players are carrying with them when they have to face up against fans who are not really caring about the game and instead using the game as a way to treat them poorly. So I will recognize, to me, that seemed like it's unfair that a player had to be exhausted and push through that. But I think we all want to see it be about ball.
We do. We absolutely do. And unfortunately, it didn't just stop there because the WNBA had to put out a statement. Because there have also been some allegations that have been alleged. So the WNBA said they strongly condemn racism, hate, and discrimination in all forms. They have no place in our league or in society. We are aware of the allegations and are looking into the matter. And then the Players Union responded, and they just basically said that they support the WNBA's investigation. They're aware of reports of hateful comments at yesterday's game in Indianapolis. Like I said, they support the current investigation. Such behavior is unacceptable under the WNBA's no space for hate policy. You referenced that earlier, Roz. We trust the league to thoroughly investigate, take swift, appropriate action to ensure a safe and welcoming environment for all.
Emphasis on take swift, appropriate action.
Yeah.
I think this is in the hands of the WNBA and the PA, to just set some boundaries, some precedents, and the tone early. Great. It's almost good that it happened first game of the season.
Agreed. And so I'm going to, the former.
Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Well, look, I'm a former lawyer and I used to do investigations. So like, this is like my wheelhouse. And, I just hope that it is thorough and that if there are findings, that they take appropriate action. And, this is action, the fact that they've even went to do an investigation, but I have to be candid that I'm tired of like statements. Like, we all know there's no room for hate. Like, to me, this statement is long overdue. We should have been hearing this like early at the beginning of last season. We didn't. So we're here now, fine. But I do appreciate that there is going to be an investigation because there were things alleged. I was not in the building. I don't know, right? But there are people alleging that certain noises were made. You have fans who attended the game who were tweeting that it was not a great environment in there. And so we don't know. And so the WNBA has to investigate this. This is tricky because sometimes you can't get in touch with people who were sitting in seats. Sometimes people don't want to actually talk and make a statement. What I will say though, and people are not gonna like this, but as someone who used to do investigations, because everyone's story may be different, but if there are multiple people alleging the same thing, something probably happened.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right, like we don't know what it is, and that's why you'd have to talk. And look, people can be sitting in different parts of, it's a big arena. So it's sort of hard. And that's why, I saw Bree Turner tweet, but like, I thought it was important that she said, like encouraging people, like if you're seeing and witnessing things, to say something. Like there was an incident in the NBA a couple weeks ago with Draymond Green at a game, but I know the fan that actually like shot video, reported, like helped and like showed security, like who was doing what. fans need to do that. People in the stands need to do that. If someone is saying something inappropriate, because this kind of does make it hard on the WNBA to investigate this, and they may or may not find something, but I just want people to understand that if they don't find something, it's not always because nothing happened. It's because sometimes it's just hard to do this kind of investigation. So I'm happy they're doing the investigation. I do consider that action, and I just hope if there are findings that they take appropriate action.
I think it's a great point, and I think it also points to the fact that nobody's saying Indiana Fever fans are bad people. We're saying like this actually puts an added onus or motivation for those who are really just like lovers of the game, lovers of their team, to try and weed out the bad actors and the bad apples that are giving the whole fan base a bad reputation. Because I know for a fact that that's a fan base. I mean, basketball didn't just start in Indiana two seasons ago.
Right.
These are fans that have been there for Tamika Catchings, all of that, that have seen a championship in 2012. Like these are storied, legacied fans, and so. You know, I love what you said too about being willing to weed that out, hold each other accountable. And the only other thing that I would say, and this is what Coach Stephanie White told me, is it's really critical when this is happening that the locker room, the Fever locker room, the players are careful about what they let into their locker room. That drama is not theirs. They must be protective of themselves. Don't forget, this is a new roster of new personalities, different personalities than the one last season. Personalities that have played in this Indiana Fever last season and complained
For sure.
and said that it was not healthy for them, and now sit in the locker room.
Yes.
And that won't stand for anything that isn't good. So like, it's also really critical for this team that has a lot of potential to love on each other, to have each other's back, and to like define what their moral standard is, and then for whatever else is happening out in that arena, whether they're wearing a Fever jersey or the other opponent's jersey, that don't matter. It's us in this locker room, and that's got to be the messaging.
Absolutely.
Blindfolds.
Well, that is an excellent point. Listen, we're gonna wrap. There's gonna be four more meetings between this team this
Crazy.
season.
Five
total.
is insane. It's almost as if.
Yeah. Almost as if. But there will be 4 more meetings, so there will be more of this, and I hope with all my might, Roz,
I pray we don't have to talk about this again.
that the next time we're talking,
I just want to only talk about.
Yes.
We didn't even speak. Angel Reese took a 3, y'all. The game has expanded. Anyway.
Yes.
Basketball only.
Basketball only.
Well, when necessary.
When necessary. Roz, thank you so much for, again, all your great contributions to this conversation. I appreciate you.
Same to you.